and I am not going to keep you a long time tonight because you all should have gotten an invitation yesterday, either yesterday or Sunday afternoon, from Dr. Stedman. He wants to have a session to talk with all of you about the OMA, and most specifically about the OMA 2. There are 2 or 3 of you who have submitted to me for review your OMA 1, and I'm going to look at those later this evening, and I'll send you some written feedback about those. But I'm not going to spend any time going over the OMA with you tonight because he wants you to be in that session with him, and I don't want you to have to listen to it twice. And I'm going to join you in that session just so that we're all on the same page. But it's at 6 o'clock on Thursday night. So if you did not get that invitation, if you'll let me know, I'll forward that to you so you'll have that meeting link. It's a Zoom meeting link. And I'll send that to you. So I'm sure that will be recorded. So if you do have a problem that you can't make it at 6 o'clock Thursday, be sure that you catch the recording on that. Because you need to be finishing up your OMA 2 next week. And actually on our schedule tonight, I'm supposed to be introducing to you OMA 3 and 4. I'm not going to do that because, like I said, I'm pretty sure that Dr. Stedman's going to do the whole thing. And I will be in the meeting. So if he does not do that, later this week, I will send you some instructions for getting started on that 3. Either in a video or written form. Dr. Z and I just talked a few minutes ago, and so we both agreed that we would send that to you. So first of all, I want to just say to you that you all did a fabulous job with that discussion board one. I mean, really, everybody, just about everybody has turned that in my group, and Dr. Z said that she had already sent a little video clip to her class telling you that, you know, you had done a great job with that. You all followed the directions really well, you know, referring to your text and, you know, giving it some substance and not just writing what you think, but you all had a good reflection. I think it was a great eye-opener for some of you because some of them that I read, you know, you didn't really have a plan, or you had a plan that there was a lot of gaps that you didn't really feel like people were prepared. A couple people had, it seemed like they felt that their staff had a great plan and that it was, you know, and that everybody was very prepared. But if it's not, you know, that's really a sort of a dangerous thing. And I think a lot of people sort of shove that to the back burner and think, oh, you know, it's not going to happen to us, or you know, something of that nature. But it's really an important thing that it's something that is practiced. And so I think it was an eye-opener for some of you. Might be a good little project for you to help an AP with, you know, or to sort of beef up the importance of that, the priority, because when the crisis comes, it's too late to start, you know, asking questions and figuring out what to do. So anyway, good luck with that. You can follow up with that with any, you know, however you feel like you need to. But and to some of you, I wrote a few questions in my comments, and you don't necessarily have to respond to that. They're really just some questions I wanted you to sort of think about. So, you know, just you can respond to me if you want to, but you don't have to. But anyway, I wanted to tell you that you've done a great job with that, and to keep that up because you've got about 15 discussion boards to do. Most of the time it's just one per week. And so be sure that you follow that same format when you're working on those. And this week's discussion board is it's a little trickier because it's one of those that just presents itself like you want to tell what you think, okay? And so I want you to give a lot of thought to that. The OMA 1 and 2, let me look at that schedule. Somebody's asking me about that. Let me go to that, and I'm going to share my screen in just a second. And you can still respond to the discussion question. If you did not turn that in, you know, what happens is the grade book just has a blank there, okay? And your final grade is going to be based on total points that you earn, and everything's on a 100-point scale. So for everything that you turn in and get graded, you have a possible 100 points, and then all of that will be accumulated through the semester. So if you miss these discussion boards, then you're just missing those points. But we don't close that out. So we never shut it down where you can't go back and do that. So if you are just anybody that's just getting books and, didn't get that in by Sunday, you can still get it in and go ahead and get that done, because remember, you don't want, you don't want to get too far behind, because, then you're going to be scrambling and you can't do your best work when you're doing that. So don't get too far behind. Let me share my screen. And so I got several things up here. Let me move this. Okay. So this is week 3, and you're supposed to be sort of completing that 1 and 2, and I believe that it's due next week. Let me see if I can get that right here. Zoom session 4. Let's go there and just look real quick. Oh, come on. I have to move this all around here. Hold on. Okay, let me get back in there. Sorry. Zoom session 4. Your 1 and 2 is due, so it's due on the 10th. That's correct. That is the Sunday night, the 10th. So 1 and 2 are supposed to be due on the 10th. Now, I think we talked a little bit about being able to use some information that you had in the AppTel, that you had done in the AppTel, and that's one of the things that Dr. Stedman is going to talk about tomorrow night. OMA 2 is kind of a hurdle piece, so once you can kind of get that one down, 3 is going to flow pretty easy, and then 4 is picking up on the competencies that you have used during the OMA. So 3 and 4 are not going to be as difficult as wrapping your head around this first couple. So let's just hold off on that and wait until you, actually next week, you'll be doing your, finishing up your 2, getting your peer reviews done, and by Sunday night, the 10th, try to have 1 and 2 submitted. And like I said, there are about 3 people. I looked at it this morning, but I was traveling and couldn't give it all my attention, so I didn't want to read it this morning. But I will go back and look at those this evening and send you some written review on that. But OMA 1 and 2 due next week. So let's go back to 3 and let's look at what this week has. This week, you're looking at the school, at the legal environment of the school in your reading, and it's just chapter 2. If you've looked at that already, it's a little bit of heavy reading. It's a lot of stuff, so much that you can't, I don't think you're going to be able to commit all of that to memory, but it's some good stuff in there. I'm going to give you some sort of cliff notes of what's really important for you to know. And then you can kind of, keep up with your notes on that. And keep it as a reference, because it is important that you know some of those major court cases, and that some major things that you need to be focused on as far as legal goes. All right, so we're going to skip over this OMA stuff until Thursday night, And your discussion board for this week is that you have to examine a school or district field trip policy. And you're going to assume that you're the supervisor on this trip, and what action would you take after the bus rear ends a car, resulting in minor injuries to several students. This lends itself for you wanting to say what you would do, but I want you to talk to your principal and or talk to somebody at the transportation office in your district and see exactly what the expectation is, okay? I want you to follow that and use that as a reference rather than just telling me what you think. You know, I think I should do this. Don't, you know, you can put your reflection at the end, but go back and just like you did with the finding that crisis manual and having those conversations with APs and principals, that's the same thing that you need to do here with this discussion board. So that's what's due this week. I've graded one peer review for the OMA. So as you finish those, as you finish your peer reviews for the OMA, and as you finish your OMA 1, go ahead and submit it, and I will read those and give you a little feedback. And you know, you can keep changing things and beefing it up, whatever it is that you need to do. If you think you've got some stuff in there that doesn't need to be there, you can keep editing your paper right up until the time you send it to TaskStream. So, you know, take advice from your peers. You can take advice from me. You can send it to Dr. Stedman and let him review it. So you'll have all of those people to review it before it's ready to go to TaskStream. So go ahead and be, you know, finish up your peer reviews this week on OMA 1 and give a lot of attention to finishing 1 and getting 2 done by the, you know, later on this week. You still have next week to work on that as well, but go ahead and get a good foothold on that, and especially after Thursday night, make sure that you know, spend some time at the end of the week getting some stuff down for 2. So there are 2 resources in here. Both of these are excellent, okay? Both of these are excellent. And I'm just going to pull this up real quick. These court cases, there are several big court cases that have influenced education the way that we see it and have it today. Back at the turn of the 20th century, in 1896 was Plessy versus Ferguson, and that was sort of the forerunner in some of these laws that have changed in the 20th century, that changed some major things. So I wanted you to, in 1896, they were talking about, there was still a lot of segregation in the schools, but it was all about being separate but equal. And yet that's not how it really was. And so some of these, like Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, but it took it so many years. It was really like 1968 before this was a reality. The things that were decided in this case was pretty true, you know, for especially a lot of Southern schools. So this is really, you should definitely know what this is about, okay? It covers the Civil Rights Act. North Carolina integrates in 1966, but like I said, there were so many issues with that, and it took a lot of extra expectations and, you know, some different things because it wasn't completed in 1966, that's for sure. But anyway, that's a really big one. Tinker versus Des Moines is all about due process rights. This was where the boys were wearing the black armbands at school. And you know that there are some, you do have some legal authorities to determine what is disruptive in the way of dress. And most handbooks have something in there about dress and about fads. That if those are deemed by the administration to be disruptive that to the school environment, that they can they can make a decision about whether students are allowed to wear certain things with that. But all of these you need to be a little bit familiar with. In 1989 was the accountability, the state ABC program. That was the first round of like EOG testing and EOCs and having a school report card and all of that. In 1994 to 1998 was the Leandro case. That's a big one, because there was not real change in the funding formula for the state of North Carolina, but there was more money delegated to low wealth districts. So that made some changes there. Of course, 2001 was No Child Left Behind. And so there's a whole lot that goes with that. And, it was that was all supposed to be realized by 2013, I think, or 2014. And of course, it wasn't. And there has been a few things, sort of tweaked and changed a little bit with that. In 2010 is when EVOS became a big piece there for us it's tied to teacher evaluations. It's also, a great source for data for student achievement. And then in 2013 and 2014, you had, that's when they decided not to students like yourself who were getting their master's degree to go into administration did not get the master's pay until, they went into a job. So just because you had the master's, you couldn't get the pay for that. So, which has been an issue kind of through the years. But these are a few of the major ones. But if you go back into your chapter 2, it's just page after page of the different articles of the Constitution and what those sort of, are about. So just having a little idea about some of those and the impacts that they've made on education is important. So at the very opening of chapter 2, it says that principals should ask themselves 3 questions. Am I implementing the regulations? Am I monitoring the regulations? And am I assessing foreseeability? And remember, we talked about that word a little bit last week. Foreseeability is having that ability to have a vision a little bit, like to foresee that something might be an issue. When it comes to preventing the violation of regulations, if you see that coming, that foreseeability is kind of a big piece there. So there are a few things that, EC, the IDEA, all of the EC, your students with disabilities, all of the regulations and laws and district policies and everything dealing with that. That's tied to federal money, and it's tied to federal rules and regulations. That's really important for you to kind of be aware of that. You won't have to do that alone, but make sure that because if you have some EC teachers who are sort of running the show with that department in your school and they aren't following those regulations, and you won't know if they're not following that if you're not monitoring it, and you're not checking behind them, and if you don't know them yourself. So those are important to know those things. And sometimes parents of students with disabilities know more than you do, because that's their one little baby and they're all about those rules. And so you need to, that's okay. You just make sure that you know what's going on with that you're up to date and know what those rules and regulations are. And there's people at your district level. There's not just you, but your team, your leadership team in your school and your EC department, that all of you are working together to ensure that all of those things are taking place. So one of the things about don't let those parents intimidate you with knowing all of that. Sometimes they like to intimidate a principal or in a school. but try to, keep things on an even keel, try to accommodate them, understanding that this is their baby, and you have to have that compassion for that a little bit. That sometimes your attitude towards them sometimes will go a long ways in helping to solve some of those issues. So try to be an advocate, and try to speak out, speak to them compassionately, so that you can come to some understanding together. And let me see what else I wanted to share with you on that. So due process is a big one, and that's going to be some discussion boards that you'll get into just a little bit later, where, anybody that's accused has the opportunity to bring their side of the story. And so you got to make sure that you do the investigations on those types of things. And Fourth Amendment has to do with student searches. So be sure that you know what your district policy is on that. Public school, we never do any strip searches or anything. You have to have a good suspicion before you can, go to a child's locker and start looking for something. The law enforcement has to have probable cause before they look. So those are the kinds of things that parents will jump all over if you violate those rights of their children. So be sure that you sort of are, following that yourself, that you're following those regulations. There are some reporting procedures for discipline issues, and there are 16 things, and those are listed in your book as well. You need to make sure that you know what those things are. They're probably in your code of conduct books in your district as well. And you want to make sure that you are investigating those things properly, and that you are reporting those discipline things, because that goes into the state discipline, and it also it has to be reported to law enforcement. I'm gonna look. Let me see up there. I don't see that in here actually, but I think that's on, maybe that's on this second list that we're going to look at. Let's go to that. Let me go back here. Dr. Lamb has put together a list of like the top 10 things here, and some of this is overlapping with those court cases and those types of things that you need to be paying attention to. So let's just take a look at those. There they are, but he's got all these acronyms there. I'll send that to you in a list, because those are the types of things that that are important for you to remember. And like I said, they're probably in a code of conduct book from your district, and you might look for that if you haven't seen that, to see if those things are listed. But like the first one, the AWI, is assault resulting in serious bodily injury. Assault involving the use of a weapon is the second one. So some of those things are those are important things for you to know what needs to be reported. All of these have to be reported to law enforcement. Okay. So number one is No Child Left Behind. All that has to do with student achievement, and making sure that you're following all those regulations for giving those students the interventions and the things that they need to improve. And then the second thing, this is persistently dangerous things that you might have to deal with. The third thing is about Power School, reporting the disciplinary things. And then prayer cannot be led or mandated by a staff member. Student dress can be regulated to avoid school disruption. Search and seizure. Like I said, reasonable suspicion by the school staff, but it has to be probable cause by the police. And zero tolerance policies are not legal. They sound good, but you can't uphold those, and so they are not legal. Abuse, neglect, and harassment must be reported to school and law enforcement. Here's your Family Education and Privacy Act, due process, both substantive and procedural, and then arbitrary, singling out certain students, and capricious, more punishment than is allowable by the law or board policy. So you got to know what your limits are on those things. But these 10 things are important for you to sort of have on your radar. And as you read through that chapter, just kind of look for those things and just read that with a little, with a little understanding, and keep some notes or some a reference to those things. And like I said, you might see a little bit there. Your discussion board this week is not necessarily going to be tied to these court cases or to these rules and regulations, but it is following your district policy, and you need to know that. So make sure that you touch base with your principal or somebody in the transportation office within your district, or just your district policies. You might have a written policy about field trips and so forth, because as you have teachers that are planning those trips, you've got to make sure that everything's checked off, that all of those things are followed, and that if something does happen like that accident, that everybody knows exactly what those procedures need to be to take care of
Dr.
that.
Whitaker,
Uh-huh.
how will we find out what all of those abbreviations mean?
I'm going to send that to you.
Oh, that's the list you were talking about?
Yes, I'm going to send that list to you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. And then, like I said, then, it'd be a good idea for you to sort of check, and if you have a code of conduct book or a district manual or something, to see if that's listed in your district, because those are important. Okay, does anybody have any questions? So this week you have your discussion board. It's discussion board number 2, and you need to continue working on your OMA and just one chapter of reading in chapter 2 of the principal guide. Anybody have any questions?
Can we ask questions about the OMA tonight, or did you say you wanted to like?
Well, you can ask me questions if you want to. I just didn't. I don't want to. I just didn't want to go through all of that if you've got to listen to it again on Thursday. So, but if you have a specific question, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I've been looking at data and everything, and I've been specifically looking at my special groups for my exceptional children.
Right.
When we make our plan, do we need to address all groups, like EC, ESL, and AIG? Or if I say, well, my AIG in my school is getting no services, so that's who I'm going to focus on?
I think it's better if you kind of address all of them, because it's sometimes people see EC and they just they think about those with disabilities, but you certainly need to address all of them. But if things are well established with your students of disability, then you could just sort of describe that a little bit and not really focus on that as in the needs assessment as something that you want to change. Okay, you don't have to have a plan for each one. You can just sort of talk about how it's going, and describe that a little bit, and say that in the investigation, though, that you discovered that the AIG students are not getting the services that they are supposed to, and that's what you're going to focus on in your needs assessment. You can take that direction.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure.
But I would mention all of them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Anybody else have a question? Okay. I'm going to let you go, and just let me see if I can find my, just go ahead and, you know, keep working on your OMA. Reach out at any time if you have, you know, some questions. And let me just check real quick before I stop this about on this chat. Yeah, you should be getting your OMA 1 uploaded like in the next day or so, because your peer review needs to be, that OMA 1 peer review needs to be completed by Sunday night. And you don't need to be uploading that Saturday night for somebody to have to turn that in Sunday night, okay? So try to adhere to what your Zoom groups have decided, and be sure that you, you know, that you give each other time to get those things done, okay? So I would go ahead and try to get that OMA 1 posted so you can
Is
get your,
it me, or is it going in and out?
it might be.
I just keep hearing in lots of interruptions. I wasn't sure if it was my internet or someone else or yours. Yeah.
Yeah, I think mine's okay. At any rate, I was saying to go ahead and finish up your OMA 1, get it posted so that your peers have 2 or 3 days to be able to get to that, to read it and give you that peer review. OMA 1 peer reviews are due by this Sunday. Any other questions? All right, so you have what you need to get started this week. And if you need me for anything, give me a call, okay? All right, you have a great evening, and I will see you Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. If you did not get that link, send me a note and I'll forward that to you, okay? All right, goodbye, everybody. Yeah.